Hello, excuse me. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first review ever on this channel. Today, we're going to be talking about Star Trek Picard Season 2, Episode 1 and 2. We've not had time to do any videos lately. We're also taking a break from our usual show, obviously, Question of Trek. We've just finished Season 3. So next month, we'll be starting with Season 4. I hope you can all hear me, by the way. If you can't, let me know. But yeah, so here we are. Our first review of a Star Trek show on this channel. Yeah, so I'm quite excited. Now, we're just going to wait a few moments, wait for some more people coming in. I can see there's a couple of you here watching, so by all means, come and say hello in the chats. Don't be afraid. I don't bite, at least I try not to. In the meantime, why not say hello? Or don't. It's up to you. So, Season 2 Picard, I have to say, so far, the first two episodes have been absolutely brilliant. I've enjoyed them a lot. A far better show. I think they did far better in the second season than they did in the first. I think the first season was just, here's a load of characters, a bit of a story, but, they threw in, I think, Picard just to get the... basically just to get the ball rolling, to get the franchise moving, as well with Star Trek Discovery at the time. But I do think, God, I do apologise. My hair is in a mess. Unfortunately, yeah, I don't know. My hair seems to be just so statically charged today. So yeah. So there's one watching, by the way. Come and say hello. Don't be afraid. Come and say hello in the chats. We're feeling lonely. Come and say hello. So, yeah, anyway, so I have enjoyed both episodes so far. There will be spoilers in this review, so, if you haven't seen it yet, come back later and you can watch this review. But no doubt you've probably seen some other reviews here on YouTube. I'm not the first one, unfortunately, to make the review, but I thought I'd give both shows my full attention and try to be honest in my review rather than just doing some rant or rave. Where a lot of YouTube channels have done that. I want to give a fair review on the two episodes. So start with episode 1, shall we? Episode 1, I thought it was a good beginning. Most of it was typically a lot of exposition from where they left off in the first season to where they are now, and obviously they were setting up all the positions of the characters so they can get on with this new story that obviously in the second season, which is obviously a season-long story arc. So yeah, Q returns, and there's a big spoiler alert. Q returns. So do the Borg. The Borg return, which was which was good to see. In these two episodes as well, finally they did answer whether or not there was more than one Borg queen. It was very subtle, but they did answer that. And yes, not all. There is more than one Borg queen in the entire collective. I don't know quite how that works, but it is where it is, and I'll get into that in a moment. But if you go back to Star Trek Voyager, you notice that there were two queens. There was the one played by Alice Krige, and another one played by Suzanne something. I can't remember her last name. But she was in the episodes like Dark Frontier or Unimatrix Zero, where Alice Krige reprised the role as the Queen in Star Trek Voyager's finale, Endgame, which was a really good episode, by the way. But there was always debate whether or not they were the same queen or they were two different queens, because they both died in different ways. But yeah. So yes, Star Trek Picard season episodes 1 and 2 of the second season did finally answer that, and I'll get into that in just a bit. So the first episode starts off with Picard, Rios, and the rest of the gang on the bridge of New Stargazer. There's a Borg queen on the bridge, and the self-destruct is activated, and so the ship is counting down. And the Queen says something to Picard, and the ship blows up. We then go back in time by only 48 hours, and we see Picard back on his vineyard. And I would say it was good. So, as we left off from the end of the first season, we realized that, some time has passed, because we thought, they were going to go some crazy adventures after they left the android planet. However, they didn't. They obviously they returned to Earth. Rios is now in Starfleet. Um, not too sure what Dr. Gerard is doing, but she wasn't prosecuted for the murder of Maddox. And yeah, Jaban is dead, unfortunately. And what else? Well, 7 of 9 now has Rios's old ship, the La Serena, and she now uses it as a transport vessel for the Fenris Rangers. So yeah, so quite a lot has happened, and it's been a year and a half since the events, since ending of the first season to the beginning of the second season. A year and a half time has passed, so that's why things are so much has changed. Hello, Gordon. Good to see you. Alien influence insanity for the Good Doctor. Well, you have to admit, how many times has a member of the Enterprise crew or Voyager crew been influenced by a alien? And then, they did some zany things, and then all was forgiven by the next episode because, they were under the influence of an alien. So that's just the way it is. But we'll get more into that as we go along. So, yes, 48 hours, now 48 hours in the past, we're on the Picard vineyard. Laris, I have to say, was looking very hot, very dangerous, but yet alluring, like a typical Romulan female was, like in the original series. Also in the Next Generation as well. Romulan women, there was something you could tell they were attractive but yet dangerous. You were either too afraid to say no or too afraid to approach them, and that's the way sort of Laris looked, and she did look good. Oh, by the way, if you're not yet hit the like or subscribe, if you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. Also, don't be afraid to share this video amongst your friends. We're on Twitter, Facebook. Just hit the share button. It's a little curved arrow. And don't forget to hit the notification bell to be notified of new videos. So, as I was saying, we're back on the Picard vineyard, and I have to say, as I was saying, Laris looked great. They were now doing the harvest of the year, collecting all the grapes. They had these big sort of floating harvesters going over the fields. Transporting all the grapes off the vines. You can see them being transported off the vines and then being rematerializing in the containers on these hovering harvesters, which were pretty cool, I thought. So a nice bit of detail there. So while that's going on, you can see new, obviously, bottles of Chateau Picard being put in crates and then put, obviously stacked up on the side, ready to be transported away, one method or the other. But yeah, no, that was a lovely bit of detail, and you can also see Laris gave a little look to Picard. Picard sort of reciprocated, but that's all it was, just a couple of glances being exchanged. So something could be developed. I think Laris at that point, it's obvious Laris has an attraction to Picard, and yeah. So at the end of the harvest, Picard and Laris are resting their feet, probably after a long, hard day's work, and they're sharing a bottle of Chateau Picard. And Laris, she sort of, Laris and Picard talk about Jaban and how they miss him, and how he was a good man. They don't really go into the detail how he died. It's just Jaban is dead, probably from old age or something. I don't know. Maybe he had a bad bottle of Chateau Picard. Maybe Jean-Luc poisoned him. Who knows? But yeah. So, however, after this point, Laris makes some advances towards Picard. Unfortunately, they fell flat, and Picard sort of says goodnight. And then after that, we then go into what I thought was a bit of a weird dream. Obviously, he was dreaming this. Picard, he goes into his conservatory, and the plot demanded it. Yeah. Well, anyway, he goes into the conservatory where obviously it's part of the old house that probably was destroyed in the fire, as we found out in Star Trek Generations. But it wasn't, obviously that's part of the house that has been rebuilt yet, or maybe he didn't want it to be rebuilt because maybe he hasn't gone in there in such a long time due to the bad memories that appear in the scene. You get some flashbacks of his mother, and who obviously painted all the flowery decal on the windows that we saw, that obviously smashed and lying on the floor. But we also get some flashback of having an abusive father. Now, I know Picard came from somewhat of a strict, reserved family, and we did see his father in the episode Tapestry, the Next Generation episode Tapestry. He did come across as hard-nosed and strict and, reserved. But I don't think, he didn't come across a guy who was abusive. Just, he was the hard-working type, and hard work and fatigue can make a person miserable. So I think it was a bit unfair, I think, to make Picard's father, shall we say, abusive. I didn't think that was necessary. Not every hero needs to have a tragic backstory, I think. Or at least that's my personal opinion. And Jean-Luc never came across a sort of person who had an abusive father. He was just, shall we say, he was a person who was stoic and a bit hard-nosed himself, like his brother Robert. But they never came across as very, very abusive, shall we say? Not in that kind of way that his father. It would seem that his father abused his mother, and he was somehow tormented by this. We never saw this in the Next Generation. But anyway, that's not necessarily. It's not necessarily to say that it didn't happen. From there, it's obviously the next morning, and Jean-Luc is skulking about his house. He's looking for a book. To which Laris comes in. I think she obviously didn't like being rejected the following night, and she goes, there you are. Well, I've been looking all over for you. Here's your tea, Earl Grey, cold. Yes, thank you. I'm looking for a book. And he was looking for a green book, which is the same book I think he hands over to Elnor later when he makes his commencement address at Starfleet. Corellia's Random Thoughts. Hi, how are you? Glad to see you. I hope you are well. So so he obviously, Laris is a little insulted that her advances were rejected by Picard. It happens. Hey, Romulans, can't handle their emotions. But hey, well, then again, it's probably the reason why the Vulcans gave them up. Now, so after that, Picard makes his way to. No, wrong. But just before that, we are on the La Serena, and some space pirates have boarded the La Serena, which now belongs to Seven of Nine, or Annika, and she uses it to transport goods for the Fenris Rangers, and she warns them. She says, these are supplies for the Fenris Rangers. If you don't get out of here, I'm going to put you down. And they tell her to show her ugly Borg face. Now, I don't care what planet you're from or what alien species you are. I don't think anyone could call Seven of Nine ugly. She's not ugly. She's a very beautiful woman. She always has been, always will be. That's just, it's Seven of Nine. How can you call her ugly? It's mean. But yeah, so moving on, she defeats them. It was over quite quickly. She defeats them, ties them up, and then beams them away. Hopefully, not directly into space, but rather to their own spaceship. Let's hope. Fingers crossed. I would say it was a lot less, a lot less graphic in this episode than compared to the last season. Last season was very graphic in the way of violence and that, and this wasn't too bad actually. We also noticed that Seven of Nine has comprised all the aspects of all the different holograms into one hologram, rather than having 5 different ones. They're now just one. It's just all the things have been compiled into one program, which makes more sense. I mean, I personally didn't have a problem. It was good to see. It was good to see the range of the actor that played Rios in this hologram. How we could play all these different distinct personalities. I think a lot of people had a problem with that. I didn't. I actually thought, here is a good actor who can show a wide range of talent. You know, he has a great acting range, but a lot of people had a problem with this, I think, in the last season. So yeah, unfortunately, they just did it. They just made the one hologram, and yeah. But it's fair enough. I mean, Voyager only had one hologram, and that was the EMH, and he had all kinds of programs compiled in, all different things compiled into his program. So yeah, it works. It's not a problem. Yeah, so she defeats them, and then we go out into deep space, where we see the USS. I think it was the USS Avalon, which was an Akira class ship, gets knocked to the side as a massive, great big green rift opens up in space, and yeah, and it sends out a distress call. And from there, we go to the Stargazer. The Stargazer is was obviously Picard's. It was a new refit. I think it was also a new class of ship. It was obviously it's a new version of Picard's old Stargazer. It still has the 4 nacelles, and when it came into as it flew across the screen, you heard the traditional Enterprise music. You know, the beginning of basically with the beginning of the TNG opening, but a much slower orchestral version. And it was a nice thing to see. It was a beautiful ship, and yeah, I have to say it was a lovely bit of ship porn. And you know, it's not Star Trek without ship porn, and it looked good. I think personally, we see Rios there on the bridge holding a cigar. I personally wasn't a fan of that. I mean, who smokes on a starship? Okay, you know. I mean, I knew Q once, you know, flicked his fingers, and everyone had a cigar on the bridge. But those, you know, that was just temporary. That was a gag by Q. But smoking on a starship, I would imagine, you know, can't be good. I suppose. I mean, yeah, you've got ventilation, you've got extractors, you know, they can remove poisonous gases, so I suppose they can move cigar smoke, but would you do it in a confined space? I don't know. You know, what if the rest of the crew are holographic cigar or a vape pen? It might be a holographic cigar, yeah. The Stargaze was very pretty, Gordon, you are right. It was a gorgeous ship. It was, you know, to be honest, I wasn't a fan of the Constellation class. I thought the Constellation class Stargazer was an ugly ship. You know, I found, I don't know, it was just horrible. What was it horrible? It just didn't do anything for me. But this new version looked great. You know, it looked like it had the nacelles from the Prometheus class, and it had a lovely, sleek saucer section. I thought it was a beautiful, beautiful ship. But yeah, so so we're on the Stargazer, and they receive. They're above a planet where Dr. Jurati is visiting, is drinking with Daj from the first season. We see Daj again, and now I'm not sure if it was an android or a or a Deltan like we saw in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, but there was this bald guy. Who looked a lot like he was the same race as Ilea, so he definitely looked Deltan, making advances towards her, and you know, she was a bit shy. So, oh, this is obviously how pretty people flirt, but she turns him down, and there was a little interaction between her and Daj, and Daj was looking out for her, making sure he wasn't going to get too drunk, and then the Stargazer receives an emergency call. Saying the rift has opened up in space, and obviously they contact Jurati, says she needs to come up with the ship, and they leave with Jurati. So again, not much going on. It was just a lot of up until this point. It's still a lot of it is exposition. Jurati mentions that she was acquitted of murdering Dr. Maddox from the first season, due to the fact she was under an alien influence. But apart from, they've been more on the ship, and they have analysed a signal that's coming through this rift. Now, again, seeing the Akira class being knocked to the side was beautiful. It was good to see some, classic ships. I wouldn't say they were vintage. I don't think they're old enough to be vintage yet, but definitely a classic ship from the DS9 and Voyager era, as well as the TNG movie era. So yeah, it was really good to see those. And anyway, so as she's analysing that, she mentions that there's thousands of voices all speaking up at once. So a big green rift, a signal sent out, thousands or hundreds of thousands of voices all talking at once. Obviously, it's the Borg. But we kind of knew that anyway. We saw the spoilers in the trailer. So yeah. So meanwhile, back on Earth, Jean-Luc Picard is at Starfleet. I think he's at Starfleet Academy. He's making an address to all the new recruits. He points out that that Elnor is the first full Romulan to join Starfleet, although he was not the first Romulan. He was the first full Romulan, but not actually the first Romulan to join, as we had Ensign Tarsis from the episode The Drumhead. He was obviously partially Romulan. His grandfather was full Romulan. I think his father was half Romulan. So he was like a quarter Romulan, but he actually lied about that and said he said he had a Vulcan heritage. So yeah, that of course that worked against him to a point, and then Picard stepped in and saved him. But yeah, it was good to see. So it was good to see Elnor again. He's still got the long hair though. I don't think if you're working in the military or you're at basic training, essentially that's what Starfleet Academy is. That you would have long hair unless it's part of your religion or something. But yeah, I don't know. You think joining the space military, and Starfleet is a military, you would have your hair cut short. Elnor still has long hair. Not much you can do about it, I suppose. So Picard gives a commencement address, and he talks about he passes on his wise words that his mother told him, which was look up and see what's out there. Wasn't really the best speech I think Picard's ever given. You think he would have given? I personally think he could have given a better one at a better speech at something like that. But okay, that's the speech. That's the speech he gave, and that's the speech we got. Moving on, we have moving on from that point. Then essentially the ceremony has come to an end. Everyone's dispersed. Everyone's going to their assignments, and Elnor and Raffi have been assigned to the USS Excelsior. Now we do see an Excelsior class ship. Obviously, I think it's a bit of an upgrade from the Excelsior of the 23rd century to what we have now. Obviously, it's gone through some refits and modifications, so it looks newer. There were some differences that I could see, but nothing. There weren't major differences. They were just they highlight the front of the nacelles in red. I think the deflector dish had a different color as well. I think it had a yellow color instead of the typical blue deflector dish, and it's got a new deflector dish on it. But all in all, it pretty much still looks the same. I would imagine it's probably got better weapons too, and probably a better class of warp drive as well. But yeah, so we do see that ship come up in a little later on this episode. From there, obviously, as they're all going off in their different directions, we see Picard hand Elnor a book. It was the book he was looking for earlier on. It was a book written by Spock. So to part on some wisdom to Elnor, hopefully it might help him. Raffi also makes a comment that his absolute candor is going to get his ass kicked. Well, okay, it might, he might get picked on for being too honest, because in the military you can never be too honest about things. It can get you into trouble, or your buddies. I know that from personal experience. So yeah, never ever be too honest. But be as honest as you can. It's very important. Picard then receives a message that, as he receives a message that the Borg want to speak to him, and that they're willing, that they want to join Starfleet. Now I don't know why the Borg would say that, or what gave but they do want to talk to Star Trek. They do want to talk to Jean-Luc Picard. I almost said Star Trek Picard. They do want to talk to Jean-Luc Picard. So Picard sets off. It only took him 24 hours to get there for some reason. It took him 24 hours from Earth to where they were, which makes you think how far away they really were from Earth. That no other ships would have noticed this great big rift until obviously the Stargazer sent out, called in for backup. So we are. So he makes his way to the Stargazer, and he's greeted by Seven of Nine, who. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Seven of Nine meets up with the Stargazer, to which Rio says, "What have you done to my ship?" He said, "Actually, it's my ship now, and she looks good with a few dents in her." Well, okay, Oh, the last arena has also undergone a change as well. It no longer looks like Eddie Van Halen's guitar. It now looks more of a grey color. I did like the old pattern better when it looked like Eddie Van Halen's guitar, the old Frankenstrat. But okay, it still looked good. Personally, just a little bit darker, and yeah, excuse me, my hair's getting in the way here. But yeah, it was. It still looked good, and they picked up Seven of Nine. So yeah, Seven of Nine meets Picard at the airlock because obviously the crew are busy dealing with the situation. And Picard and Seven walk through the ship, and Picard, gives his point, gives his opinion on this new ship and that he likes the new design. He also says the more refits these old ships go through, the newer they look. So I'm not sure if this is a refit of the old Stargazer or if it is a whole new ship. Like a whole new class of ship that was specifically built and then called the Stargazer. It's hard to say because the old Stargazer that returned that was returned by the Ferengi was never destroyed. It was towed off to a star base, and well, who knows what happened to it. We're not sure if it was ever put back in service or if it maintained, but whether this is the same Stargazer as Picard's Stargazer or if it's a whole new that just went through a whole load of refits, or if it's a whole new Stargazer, we don't really know. And I don't know. It does have a new starship class. It does have a new classification now as a starship. So it could be when they changed the number, because they added a number on there, that they also changed the class of the ship. But it's actually the same ship, that's just undergone a whole load of refits. Who knows? I see there's 5 people watching. Don't be afraid. I see 2. There's only 2 in the chats. Don't be afraid to come and say hello. We don't bite. Well, Gordon might, but I promise you, Gorilla's Random Thoughts and I do not bite, at least not hard. So don't be afraid. Also, don't forget to hit the like, and if you're not yet subscribed, hit the subscribe button. But more than that, so moving on, Picard's now on the bridge, and he asks them to open up a hailing frequency, and he communicates with the Borg. And I know, yes. Gordon says safe class starship. Well, I don't know. Maybe. Gordon says, no, I'm joking. Gordon doesn't bite. At least I hope not. But anyway, so Picard opens Hainfree and the Borg communicate, and they are asking for his help. They are willing, they're even willing to surrender the Queen. They said, you will not beam the Queen aboard. They raised the shields and obviously charged the weapons, but they were still able to beam the Queen past the shields. Although Picard was quite hesitant, he didn't like this idea. He thought if the Borg want to join Starfleet, this would be a good idea. However, everyone else on the ship tells him this is a bad idea, and personally, I agree with them. I think given Jean-Luc's experience with the Borg, you would think, he would also be a bit, he wouldn't throw caution to the wind so easily. I think he'd also be very skeptical. The Borg do not, the Borg assimilate. They do not allow themselves to be assimilated. But yeah. Gorilla's Random Thought says, Gordon says, I don't bite much. And Gorilla's Random Thought says, I'm a nibbler, not a biter. Well, okay. Well, Gorillas then will nibble you. He will nibble you. No, he won't. I'm joking. He won't. But yeah. So where was I? Yeah. So the Borg being the Queen aboard. Now this was a whole new Queen that we've never seen before, and which obviously gave rise to a lot of skeptical what they've done with the Borg Queen, because this is not the one we saw in the trailer. But so we thought maybe she's wearing a mask, but then it didn't fit the head shape, because the head shape that we saw of the Queen in in the trailer, who appears in episode 2, had a much different appearance, you know, and no way that mask would have fit around. So this was obviously a very different queen, and this is where, you know, the show, Starship Picard, finally sort of finally shows us that there is more than one Borg queen in the whole collective. I think one queen is in charge of, let's say, of a Unimatrix. So you've got Unimatrix 1, Unimatrix 2, Unimatrix 3, and each Unimatrix is controlled by a specific queen. Now, the ship that is coming through the rift, this massive Borg ship, does remind me of the old Queen's diamond shape Borg ship, which was, you know, which was bigger than, I think, even a Borg cube, but it was the Queen's very own specific ship, you know. But this one was much bigger, and of course, in the new Star Trek, all the starships are bigger, even the Enterprise. So, you know, it's not hard to imagine that this is a much bigger ship. But they beamed their queen aboard, and, you know, as I said, this very different queen because she had a cape on, she had shoulder pads, she also had this plate, this chest plate going around her, so to say, over her shoulders, that looked very much like the Darth Vader outfit. Apart from the mask, the rest of it kind of looked like Darth Vader's outfit, and especially the color palette had the black and the grey, which, you know, looked like Darth Vader's chest plate that went from one side of his shoulders to the other. The only thing was different was the mask, but there was a lot of good details on the mask, and also it was some sort of clockwork mask as well. It was very mechanical. So yes, I think this was a different queen, but there was more. There was more mentioned about this in the next episode. So the Borg queen starts plugging herself into all the consoles. She says she needs power, and as we know, the Borg do need to regenerate. We saw a similar thing with Hugh in the TNG episode I, Borg, where they adapt a port for him to recharge himself, as he had a little connector on his wrist, so he plugged himself into the wall, and it allowed him to obviously feed off the energy of the ship to maintain his Borg implants and to stay nourished. But the way she did, what her approach was, of course, these tentacles came up behind her, and they just start plugging into things. And at that point, then the crew on the Stargazer, the bridge crew at least to begin with, start pulling out the phasers, and they start firing at her. Obviously, she adapts straight away. She brings on a force shield, and then she starts firing back and stunning the crew of the ship. And more crew members start coming up. They start coming up from the ship into the bridge and firing at the Queen. You know, at this point, it seems a bit futile because, you know, she's adapted to the phaser frequency. So what's the point? Gordon says 80s Borg Queen with shoulder pads. Yes, 80s Borg Queen with shoulder pads. Maybe she's from the 80s. Maybe she's from the 24. Maybe she's from the 24 80s. Who knows? But it seems like they're in a bit of a panic, as it was mentioned that the Borg were decimated. Now, with the word decimated means 10% was destroyed. So let's say if they had 1 million Borg, you know, only 100,000 were destroyed, leaving, you know, another 900,000 roaming around. So that's not really like for the Borg a major loss. They probably, you know, make that back. They'll probably make that number back in a year, I presume. You know, so yeah. So being decimated, at least by the Borg standard, is not a great. I think what they meant by this was the Borg have been heavily damaged, and they're not they're not the big force that they used to be. But yeah. So, although it was also mentioned, I forgot to mention it. I forgot to talk about this actually. The new Stargazer, as well as some of the other ships, also now have Borg technology integrated into them. The technology that was taken from the artifact, where we obviously met Dr. Jurati and the Romulans in season 1. I can imagine that they use something similar to the Borg technology, but actually the technology from the Borg and just plug it into the ship. I can't imagine they would ever do that. I mean, I know 7 and 9 did that a lot when she was on Voyager. You know, if there was a problem, Seven Arm just plug in a nanoprobe. Tubules, and then just inject loads of nanoprobes, and nanoprobes would fix the ship or upgrade the ship, and then the Voyager will win the day. But they were alone in the Delta Quadrant. You think obviously Starfleet would be a bit more, would apply a lot more caution, and actually they could use their own nanites. They could build their own nanites and then have them plugged into operating the ship, but to actually plug alien technology into your ship and think it's going to be okay. I had a little battle. I sort of thought maybe there was going to be a Battlestar Galactica feel, and all the ships were going to get turned off. And speaking of ships, a whole fleet arrives. Yes, but not like the fleet at the end of Star Trek Picard season 1, where it was essentially 2 different ships just cut and pasted all over the show. Nope. We got a whole fleet of a whole variety of ships when the fleet arrived. We had what looked like a Nebula class, obviously an upgraded Galaxy class, with a couple of Akiras, with a steam runner, I think, an Excelsior, and obviously the La Sirena was there as well, and a few more ships, which was really good to see. It was really good to see some of these classic ships from the TNG era, TNG DS9 era, appear. I think there was also a Nova class as well, which again looked great. At the point, as the Borg Queen refuses to disengage, Jean-Luc Picard activates the self-destruct, and the ship begins counting down. Now, I thought it quite strange that how an admiral who's not in command of the ship can just activate the self-destruct. Would typically, it required at least 2 senior officers to activate the self-destruct, where he could just turn it on by himself. I thought it was a bit strange, but okay, that's just the way it is. That's maybe it's a new protocol. So yeah, doesn't look like Jean-Luc's going to get to upgrade the Kobayashi Maru simulation after all, because he's about to die. At least that's what we think. And as it counts down, we hear that the computer is mentioning how much of the ship the Borg Queen is taking over, and eventually it counts down to 0. And just before the ship blows up, the Queen says to Picard in his mother's voice, "Look up, Jean-Luc, look up." And then the ship blows up. There's a massive bright white flash of light, and then we see Picard back at the Vineyard. He's now wearing this black jacket with this big delta on this new design of a delta on his jacket. Everything seems unfamiliar to him, but yeah, he knows where he is, but he doesn't know what's going on, because as far as he's concerned, he was just about to blow up. And as he comes to his feet, he looks around. Everything's there, but it's not quite right, and he notices all these differences. And he notices an old picture of himself in this black Starfleet uniform. Gordon says Sovereign class was there, plus Southern class, Ross class, Excelsior 2 class. So they call it Excelsior 2 class. Excelsior, Akira class were all there. Yes, I'm pretty sure there was a Nova class there as well. At least, or maybe it's got a new class name now. But yeah, I know some of them. Like when I said, Nebula class and Galaxy class, they now actually have a new class and name. They were Nebula and Galaxy classes. They were just slightly, they just had a slightly newer design. Personally, I don't think there was any reason to change those the class of those, or say change the classification name. But then again, saying that, if the Stargazer is still the same Stargazer that was just upgraded from Jean-Luc's Stargazer, then they changed the class of that. Then maybe they changed all the class names, at least on a large part of the fleet, maybe to intimidate the enemy. Look, we have these new class of ships. Wait a minute, they look like the old class of ships. Who knows? I'm sure it's possible. So Jean-Luc's walking around. Everything's unfamiliar. He meets Harvey, an android, a Maddox style android, and he asks about where is Laris, and he says there is no Laris here, sir, but I could check the Romulan immigrant database. to find her. He says, no, that's fine, don't worry. And what the hell's going on here? To which we then hear, good question, Mon Capitan. And we turn around and there's a very young Q. You know, the young John Delancey looked great. Again, it was good to see Q young. And he says, my, you've grown old. Here, let me catch up. And he snaps his fingers, and then we have an old Q. And he walks, and his final words of that episode were, remember the last time we met? I said, the trial never ends. And the thing is, that was probably the wrong place to end that episode. My personal feeling, I think they should have ended the episode with Q's appearance. And when he said when he said Mon Capitan, and that should, and he turns around and sees a young Q, and that should have been the end, because at the end of All Good Things, we saw, you know, it was a monumental speech. It was a great scene, and you know, just to drop, well, the trial never ends, and then end the episode there. I thought, yeah, it was not enough time. You know, they spent too much, so pretty much all of the episode dumping exposition on the viewers, and then, you know, now, you know, think the bit we were all waiting for, which was John Delancey to return, or Q to return, and then just to drop that line in quickly and then end the episode. I think that was a bad ending for the episode. So yeah, they should have just, personally, I think they should have ended it with the appearance of Q. Picard looks shocked, and then roll credits. You know, and then they could have done the rest of that in the following episode with, you know, a bit, you know, with a little bit more dialogue, personally. But hey, that's the way it ended. The first episode I thought was pretty good. Actually, I thought it was a good start to the season. It was slow. It didn't try to be more than, you know, it didn't try to be anything too special. It just essentially, it got the ball rolling for the next episode and obviously the rest of the season. So yeah, I think that's why we had all these very slow scenes and all this exposition throughout the episode. It was okay. It wasn't a bad episode. It wasn't a great episode either. Now we're going to see episode 2. Now, episode 2 was a brilliant episode. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So the episode, obviously, will start off right back again. Chateau Picard. There's Q, and watching watching again Q and Picard interact with one another was absolutely fantastic. It's it was always one of the highlights of The Next Generation. However, this Q seems much more like season 1, season 2 Q, rather than the Q that came later in the later seasons, as well as in Voyager, where it was a bit more comical, it was more the comic relief. Here, he was more of the Big Brother style, but it was a lot more aggressive. And I have a theory about this. Probably wrong, but as I said, it's just a theory. But I'll get into that in a moment. So Picard shows him around this new obviously this new reality. As he said, it's the path, it's the end of the road not taken. And he shows him around, and we see obviously that in this universe, he's not an admiral, rather than he's a general. So they're using army terms rather than navy terms. And yes, so obviously he's General Picard, not Admiral Picard. And he takes him into Aravik Zonda. How you doing, Jolan True? Glad to see you. We're just reviewing Star Trek Picard, season 2, episode 1 and 2. You just missed the first part. We're now going to do episode 2. We're going to do episode 2 now. So yes, episode 2. As I said, we're now back at Chateau Picard, and Q is showing him around this new reality that, for some reason, he keeps saying Jean-Luc has created it and not Q. So this could be like the temporal anomaly in the episode All Good Things, where you find out it was actually the crew of the Enterprise that created this and not Q. But all suspicion was on Q, because he obviously can just snap his fingers and make it happen. But yeah, so obviously Jean-Luc at some point in history, whether in the past or in the future, will alter time. I'm guessing it's Jean-Luc, or maybe one of the main casts. It's difficult to say. I am looking forward to finding out how this all happened, though. I think this is going to be a great season. It started off so well so far. I think this is going to be a really, really good season. Gordon said, I liked Menacing Q. I liked him too. As I said, Q was always this all-powerful, I'm better than you sort of being, but he could but he was, as I said, he was more of a big brother figure than than a villain. He always tried to impart some sort of lesson on the crew of the Enterprise, especially in the episode Cube Who and in All Good Things. But yeah, so we don't know what quite the lesson is yet. I also think, though, wherever it is, I think this could be a result of the Q dying. I think maybe the Q are dying and they're going senile, because even though they are Q, maybe even the Q don't last forever. Who knows? But other moving on. So he takes him into this library or study, and we see all these different skulls. We see a skull of a Ferengi. It could be the Grand Nagus, because we do see the Grand Nagus's cane next to it. We see a Klingon uniform that we saw in Star Trek Discovery in the pilot. We also see lots of weapons mounted up on the wall. You saw a blaster rifle and a dagger from the Zhat Vash, as well as some Klingon weapons. I think there were 1 or 2 Klingon weapons on the wall. And we pan along, and you see a big picture, a big portrait of obviously their version of the Galaxy class, which was called the World Razor, not the Enterprise. And you see it battling a number of Borg cubes. So obviously their version of the Galaxy class was an absolute killing machine. It was a murder machine, essentially. And and they probably used that ship to conquer many worlds. Excuse me. They probably used that ship to conquer many worlds, as this is that kind of reality. So anyway, Q shows him the skeleton and says, "This one is Golden Cat. You murdered him. He's also responsible for your artificial body in this reality," which I thought was a bit silly, because in this reality, maybe he wouldn't have an artificial body. Who knows? You think he'd have a real one? You think at least Q could give him a real one? He has the power. He could just snap his fingers. Also, we then see General Martok. Jean-Luc beat him in armed combat. Also, he destroyed his planet with a deadly virus as well. He wiped out all of Kronos. Bizarrely, I wouldn't think Jean-Luc would need to do something like that, even in that reality, but he did. He had Sarek executed on the steps of the Vulcan Science Academy, along with his wife and his son. Whether or not his wife was Amanda Grace and his son was Spock, we don't know. All we know is, it could be in that reality. I don't think humans would have, should we say, interbred with aliens. So it was probably a different wife. So that son probably wasn't Spock. But I know a lot of people had a problem with these characters being mentioned, like Ducat, General Martok, and everyone else. Keep in mind that this universe they're now in is a throwaway universe. They're not going to be there very long. So with it being a throwaway universe, these are throwaway characters, and they're not the characters that we knew and loved from DS9 and the TNG era. So it isn't really worth making a fuss about it. Like I said, they're not going to be in this universe very long, and it's a throwaway universe. So it's going to be a throwaway. These are going to be throwaway characters. And we move on. Q takes him outside and then into the fields, where he see obviously there is Romulan slaves in the distance, doing the harvest. To which Jean-Luc says, "But the harvest were done." "Ah, yes, but this is the harvest of a different season," he said, which I think is a clue to something else. But Jean-Luc is not happy. He's scared. He's worried. He said, "Q, what the hell is going on? What is this bullshit?" And essentially, Q just smacks him across the face, leaving him with a bloody nose. And Jean-Luc was, sort of say, devastated by this, because Q was never struck him before. We've seen Cisco strike Q, but Q never struck anyone. And it's that point, I was quite shocked. I think a lot of people were shocked by seeing that scene. that I think Q is, so we say, I think maybe the Q are dying, and yeah, so that's that. Sorry, there's some noise going on. Yeah, but as I was saying, so yeah, the Q are dying. Well, I think that I personally think that the Q are dying, and this is obviously, you know, there's something going on. Why they're dying, I don't know. Could be something Jean-Luc has done. Who knows? But well, moving on from there, he takes them inside. You see that there's Romulan slaves in the house, and they're all really scared of him. You know, and that this new reality is essentially, you know, the humans are conquering the galaxy. And from there, he leaves. He leaves Jean-Luc on his own. He does promise him, though, that they have to figure this out they have to figure this out. But he's not alone. So when he disappears, the Harvey android walks in, turns around, sees the Harvey android, says, "Did you see that person next to me?" He says, "I'm sorry, there's been no visitors here all day." And then he asks about Laris, and the only mention is about Laris and Jaban, who were freedom fighters who are dead. They were executed. So yeah, they're dead. So they're not playing a role in this universe. Who are the other members of the crew? Obviously, 7 of 9 is here in this episode, in this new reality. She's the president. Who else? So she's the president. So she wakes up and she's sort of disturbed. She doesn't know what's going on. She notices all her Borg implants are gone. She has no implants. So she writes an equation in the mirror. Yeah, you know, her visual and IQ, her visual acuity and her IQ are still intact. You know, she does all these different tests to make sure that she's not dreaming. And yeah. So, you know, she's now fully aware that she's in a whole different reality and everything's changed around her. She also has a husband. To be honest, you wouldn't think that this, you know, she would be married to a person like this. Excuse me, but she is. But yeah, Dr. Girardi is now she works in a lab. She has a holographic cat called Spot 73. Which is obviously a new, obviously a little member berry on Data's cat called Spot. So this is obviously a holographic version. This is the 73rd version of this cat over time. Why not? I mean, there's the constant new software upgrades going on, so it's probably a new version of that cat. And this one also talks. And Rios is commanding a ship very similar to the last arena. There are several ships of this class flying around. They're in a space battle with the Vulcans. Rios has no idea what's going on, and these people are taking orders from him. He is unaware of the situation, so he's just trying to wing it and trying to pass for normal wherever they are. Then we're back on Earth again, and Jean-Luc is watching a holo recording of the version of Picard in this universe, where he says, a safe galaxy, a human galaxy is a safe galaxy. With all the worlds we conquered, we now have their resources, which will benefit us. But when you look at the ordinary folk on that world, on that Earth, even the humans, they don't look too well off. They don't look like they're living the high life. They actually look like they're poor. So you've got like the elitist class, and then you have the poor, but they're always cheering for him. They love him. So I don't know. Treat him mean, keep him keen, I suppose. But yeah. But essentially moving forward to get the ball wrong, it is what was the word? I've forgotten. Oh God. It was a special day. I've forgotten the name now. Help me out. I think it was Elimination Day or something. We're going to get rid of they're going to get rid of one of the biggest threats to the Federation. Obviously, the last remaining member of the Borg, which is the Borg Queen. Now, this Borg Queen was different to the one we saw in the first episode. The random as Insomniac Stream. Yeah, no, not quite. we won't be probably doing another 15 minutes, and then we'll be ending the stream anyway. Yeah. Eradication Day. That's it. I was thinking elimination, Eradication Day, and yeah. So they're going to get rid of one of their biggest threats, which was obviously the last remaining member of the Borg. Yeah. So obviously, Jean-Luc's watched the hologram. 7-9 is now being briefed on the Eradication Day. But she hasn't asked too many questions like what the hell is Eradication Day, because she obviously knows that wouldn't serve her too well. So in order to survive, she's sort of not playing dumb, but she's, doing her best to pass for normal in this new reality. She also wants to know what's going on in the field. She says, her husband says, shall I get General Cisco to get in touch with, to let you know what the situation is? So it's a good little call back to Ben Cisco, but she says, no, I want my information unfiltered. I want someone who's in the field right now. And she quickly looks for database, get me Colonel Rios. So she makes contact with Rios. Rios answers hail, and they're a little bit skeptical of one another. They're not too sure, if Seven not too sure if this is the Rios she knows or the Rios from that universe. Likewise, Rios is the same. He's not too sure if this is the Seven that he knows or the Seven from this reality. Vincent Gillespie, Vincent, nice to see you. Also, Random Menace, thank you for joining the stream, by the way. Always a pleasure to see you. By the way, don't forget to like. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe. Also, if you'd like to donate to the channel, the PayPal to our PayPal, the link is at the pin to the top of the chats. But yeah, anyway, so she makes contact with him, and they're both a bit skeptical, and she says, send a report. No matter how has anything strange happened, wherever, no matter how strange it is, you can tell me. And obviously, immediately Rios realizes this is the Seven he knows, and he calls her Seven. And she says, yeah, I want you to come. I need you to come back here right away. That's a presidential order, because she's the president. So while the rest of this little fleet of La Serenas are fighting the Vulcans, Rios turns the ship around and heads back to Earth. I think, what was I now? I had this in my I should. Yes, so yeah, Rios makes his way back to Earth. In the meantime, Jean-Luc has been called in to go meet with the president for Eradication Day. So he makes his way there. While that's going on, there was a terrorist attack, or the Romulans have planted some explosives in different buildings, and they all blow up. And they said one for the Andorians, one for the Romulans, one for the Vulcans, and so they commit themselves to terrorist acts. And obviously, in this reality, Elnor is a terrorist. He's a terrorist. But he's again not sure what's going on. They then end up getting surrounded by the security forces, and who's the head of this one particular security force is, of course, Raffi. She spots Elnor, and she takes him into custody rather than killing him like the rest were killed. She says, I want this one alive, and she tells him, look, just go with it no matter what happens, because he knows he's probably going to get beaten up quite a bit and maybe tortured, but she tells him just to hang in there and essentially lie, which is usually against Elnor's should we say, absolute candor. But in this situation, for survival, he's going to have to, if he wants to survive. So they end up meeting up with Picard as they make their way, and Seven as they make their way to go and see Dr. Jurati, and they meet up with her. Luckily, everyone's okay. Picard explains that Q has changed everything. He says there's also something off about Q, because usually when he does something like this, there's a lesson to be learned. But I don't think this is what's happening. There's something has changed. We need to figure out what it is. So they obviously they bring out the Borg Queen, and they ask her if something has changed the past, what happened? And the Borg Queen tries to calculate, what has transpired, what's going on, and she couldn't. She couldn't be. She couldn't calculate the most specific, like who did what, but she could say, but she was able to calculate the point of what year and where, but who was responsible, no one knows. Yeah, so she was able to determine that. So now they need to figure out how to get back in time. Dr. Dwight mentions that Picard says, there are many ways of time travel, some cruder methods, like doing a time warp around the sun, because Seven says that their technology is roughly about the same as ours, same as the Federation's, and I don't think they have the capability of time travel. Well, they don't really know. They haven't really had a good look around. I mean, they might have a time machine, but I guess they don't want to stay there too long. They're not willing to so they're not willing to hang around too long. So they want to get out there quickly as possible. So she calculates that. So they then begin planning a way to escape, which is essentially taking the Borg Queen and the rest of the crew to beam up on the La Sirena once it arrives, and have her calculate the time warp and slingshot around the sun in order to get them home. Sorry, in order to get them to the past, not to get them home. In order to get them to the past, in order to undo whatever changes were made in the past. So, and the Borg Queen says you also need to seek out someone called the Watcher. Now, the only person I can imagine who the Watcher is, there was a character in I think it was a season 1 episode of what, I'm not sure it was season 1 or season 2. It was called, the episode was called Non Sequitur, and there was a being there. The episode is where Harry Kim wakes up back at San Francisco. It turns out he didn't end up on Voyager, neither did Tom Paris. It turns out he turned the mission down. So he served his sentence in he served his sentence at the New Zealand penal colony, and then he got out, but he now lives as a civilian in France somewhere. So but apart from that, I reckon that being could be the Watcher, because he was able to get hair in my excuse me about that. So he could be the Watcher that they're talking about. Who knows? So I can't. Or this could be an entirely new character. But this character from the Non Sequitur did live in San Francisco. So we don't know how long he's been there. It could be that Guinan is the Watcher, because she's been there since she was on Earth for a few centuries, as we saw in the episode Time's Arrow. So who knows? As they come up with the plan, obviously they need to play along and get everything ready for Eradication Day. So the Elnor stays with Jurati, stays with Raffi and Jurati in the lab, and Picard and Seven get ready. Picard and Seven get ready for Eradication Day at the big presentation, as everyone's going to be watching, as the Yartoti publicly execute the Borg Queen, to finally get rid of an enemy that who was the Confederation's worst or biggest enemy. Which I say it couldn't be that big of an enemy if they were able to wipe them out. I don't know. One of the things to note is the Borg Queen she has a temporal node in her head, which somehow allows her to slightly communicate with other Borg Queens in different versions of reality, which I thought was a bit weird, but okay. But there was a point I made earlier talking about how there are different Borg Queens. When Seven relayed communication to I think it was to Rios, she said we are Borg Queens. What the Borg Queen from the Watcher could be Carl. It could be Carl. Vincent also said Dr. Jurati's virtual cat is pretty cool. Yeah, we just spoke about Spot 73 a few moments ago. But yeah, what was that? Yes, she said, we have the Borg Queen. We want to bring her aboard. It's not the Borg Queen that was on on the Stargazer. This is more of a typical queen. She said this was more of a typical queen. So I think it now just justified. It now just essentially made canon that there are more than one Borg. There's more than one Borg Queen in all of the collective. There are multiple queens. I think one queen for maybe each unimatrix. I won't say one queen for each cube, but I will say one queen for each unimatrix. So just like each ant hive, is a big hive. Each one has its own queen. Each unimatrix has its own queen. So yeah, so all of them are interconnected. They each, have their own queen to sort of organize and keep things, keep everything together. So who knows? Maybe there's one big Borg Empress. Who knows? Maybe we'll find out in a later episode. But yeah, so they start getting the plan together. Although the husband is very skeptical because he heard Jurati call obviously Annika. She's called 7 and 9 is called Annika in this reality. He heard Dr. Wright call her 7. So she quickly comes up with a story that they were drinking buddies in college, and she was known as 7-shot Annika. So she could only handle 7 shots out of 9, which okay. But yeah, it wasn't a bad excuse. They did what they had to do to survive. But so they're now at the big presentation. Annika Hansen makes a big speech. General Picard is there. Everyone's cheering for Picard, and he comes forward. They bring out the Borg Queen up through this circle. What should I say? Dais, I suppose, that opens up, and the Borg Queen, who has no arms or legs. Essentially, she's just a torso and a head. Rises up through the floor, or through the stage, should we say? And she's there to be executed. Jean-Luc pulls out his phaser, and he's hesitant. Everyone's cheering, do it, do it, do it. But he's obviously not. He's waiting he's waiting to be beamed up by Rios on the last arena, which they're having some troubles with because the defense shields are up, and Gerard is working as quickly as she can to try and disengage it. While that's going on, the security force that's with them in the lab, attacks Raffi and Elnor, so they'll deal with that. Elnor's quite brutal. He slit. I think he slit like each and every. I think he slit everyone's throat. Obviously with one of these sharp blades, he slit all their throats. And then they were able to beam out out the lab, and then Jean-Luc, 7, and the Borg Queen were obviously beamed up to the last arena as well. I have to say this episode was very action-packed. There was, there was a lot of great dialogue. It was very tense. You could feel the suspense in the, in these moments, especially when they were sort of, they were saying the right things but not quite right. They were, people were noticing they were somewhat out of place. But they didn't want to obviously be given their rank and their, so we say, their position in the Confederation. I don't think anyone would dare say anything, out of fear of being executed or murdered, or maybe their families would get murdered for it as well. But in the end, they managed to survive that bit. But when they beamed up, obviously, to the last arena, that's when things got really tense. So while Jurati starts plugging in the Borg Queen, Rios and Raffi start setting course for the sun, and obviously they then begin. They start being chased by their version. They start getting chased by their version of the starships. In the meantime, then they also get boarded by. They get boarded on the ship, and it's. Annika's husband shoots Elnor, so we see him suffering, and they're all essentially held up at a phaser point, and that's pretty much where the episode ends. Yeah. So, Gordon, that smile from the Queen. Yes, the Queen's smile was, yeah. Well, it was quite a naughty smile, but yeah. But I like the way how Jurati is scared shitless of the Borg Queen, although she has no arms and legs, she can't do much. She's still scared of this Borg Queens, which says a lot of how powerful the Borg are in the Prime universe. And obviously, the way they got the Borg Queen to agree to go with them is that they will take her with them to their reality where the Borg still exist in the Delta Quadrant, because in this reality, obviously, they don't exist. They've been wiped out. She can't communicate with any of the Borg anywhere. So yeah, the Borg have been wiped out by this military, by this more, so to say, this far more militaristic version of Starfleet. I mean, no, Starfleet is the military of the Federation, but this one was far more, far more militaristic, much more tyrannical. And I think they focused more on firepower than they did on science equipment. So yeah, but no, I got to say, this episode was probably one of the best episodes of Star Trek Picard I've ever seen. I think it's probably the best episode of all the new shows. I think. I mean, Star Trek Discovery had some good episodes in season 2, like Project Daedalus, New Eden, and If Memory Serves. But of all the new shows, I think this is my favorite episode so far. Star Trek Picard season 2, episode 2 was by far my favorite episode. There was one bit I forgot to talk about in the first episode, was where Picard goes to see Guinan. Whoopi Goldberg looks older in this, and I made the same mistake as well. Obviously, they are immortal and they do grow older, but maybe I think they can control the ages of how they look. They can control. Maybe they can make themselves look younger again. I don't know. But yeah, Guinan mentioned that they can. We only look old if we want to. But it doesn't mean that they don't, that they don't grow old. It just means they can change their appearance to appear old. They can control that at the cellular level, maybe. Which, why not? I mean, we don't really know too much. I mean, Guinan was always a mystery anyway. Guinan and the Elorian race were always somewhat a mystery. We never found out too much about them. So who knows? Maybe. It's not that they say that they are completely immortal. They are still long-lived, but they can alter their appearance to, look older if they choose to. Which at first I thought that just sounds silly, but then again, you think, well, if they want to look a certain way, doesn't mean they're actually they can look a certain age. Doesn't mean that they are that age. So I suppose it's possible. But yeah, no, Brandon Menace, you are correct. Picard is really, really good. This season of Star Trek Picard is really these first 2 episodes of the new season were a lot better than anything in the previous season. The Guinan explanation was unnecessary. It was unnecessary, but it was in there. I think they thought obviously I had to explain it away. It wasn't the best explanation, but yeah. The first episode, I mean, the second episode definitely surpassed the first one, and but it was still a good episode. But as I said, the first episode was more of an exposition dump, just to let everyone know sort of where they are now after a year and a half, this, that, and the other, and then straight into episode 2. And episode 2 was, it started off slow, had a lot of, just a little bit of exposition from Q. But all in all, it was a good interaction, great dialogue, some great scenes. It was just to let us know what universe they're now in and how they're going to have to do what they have to deal with. And then Q leaves, and then Picard and the crew have to deal with this, sort of navigate, uncoordinated through this new universe. But luckily, they were all majority of them were all in positions of power. So, so they could easily, make things happen the way they want them to. So in order, they have a better chance of survival. But in the meantime, but they knew they couldn't say too much or do too much because, because obviously it would give them away, and they'd probably end up with their heads on the chopping block. So they have to do what they have to do to survive. But Picard having an artificial body in that reality, I think, was unnecessary. I don't think there was any need for him to have it. They could have just given him. You could just say, okay, in this universe you have a normal body. It wouldn't have made any difference, personally, I don't think. But yeah, but seeing Q hit Picard, as I said, I think something's happening because the Borg, in the Prime, back in the Prime universe, they were clear. It seemed like they were running for something, or something was happening to them. Now, this could be just a game that Q was playing that might not have been the Borg at all. It might have just been Q having fun, or something's happening that all the powerful races in the universe are being wiped out. How, I don't know. But it also seemed that Q seemed confused about Picard, whether he was talking to the Picard of that universe or the Picard that we know and love. Because he keeps talking about, because he kept mentioning that, how this is the universe that Picard created. So who knows, maybe this Q that we saw was the Q of that particular universe and not the Q that we know. I don't know. It's bizarre. So it could be maybe something's happening, that the Q from the Prime universe snapped his fingers, sent Picard and his crew to the other universe, and then the Q that he met there was the Q from that universe. Because it did seem very different, and maybe, I don't know, maybe Q doesn't know couldn't tell that this wasn't his Picard, or maybe it is our Q from the Prime universe, and we just don't, there's something not right with him. But the only way we're going to find that out is in later episodes, so we have to keep watching, and there will be another review, hopefully next week, Monday, after the following episodes. So with that out the way, my personal thing, I'll give both. I think we give the first episode a score. I think I'll give them a 7 out of 10. But this episode, I will give a 8.5 out of 10. I think this was a very good episode. It didn't drag on too much like the first episode, and then just give a tiny bit of Q and Picard at the end, rather than it gave us just the right amount of dialogue between Q and Picard, let us know what's going on, how everything in this universe, essentially in this new universe, works, what everything this Picard from that universe has done, and then they're left alone to make their own way. We see how each character sort of tries to deal with the situations that they're in, by playing by not playing dumb, but by just being quiet, not speaking too much, not asking too many questions, and essentially, just sort of just letting things happen around them, and just not getting in the way. And I think that there should be there should be a class at Starfleet Academy, because the amount of times they've jumped into different realities and everything else. You'd think that you think there would be a class at Starfleet, so everyone knows then how to deal with a situation when something like this would happen. Who knows? Maybe when they do get back, Picard will create a new class on this subject. Brendan May says, I agree with the score. Thank you. Alexander, so do I. I'm really enjoying this season so far. So am I, actually. This is, as I said, a lot of people giving the new Star Trek shows a lot of stick. I've not seen the new season of Discovery yet, unfortunately, because I don't have Paramount Plus. Hopefully, Strange New Worlds will appear on either Netflix or Amazon Prime. Because I know Paramount Plus are planning to expand the streaming service worldwide, especially in Europe. Unfortunately, I don't know when, so it might not be out by the time Strange New World starts. If not, then unfortunately, hopefully it'll be either on Netflix or Amazon Prime. And if it's not, well, we'll just have to sail the high seas, won't we? But yeah, so yeah, those are my scores. 7 out of 10 for episode 1, and an 8.5 for. So yeah, don't I say an 8.5 for episode 2, which was absolutely fantastic. It had great amount of action. It had it had a great amount of some exposition, but not too much. It wasn't inundated on information just being dumped on the viewer. Randomized Discovery is boring. So I enjoyed season 2. I thought season 2 was pretty good. But I don't think it sort of recovered from that, really. Season 3 was okay for the most part. The first half of season 3 was the strongest, but then the second half really sort of let it down. And I've said I've not seen season 4 yet, so I don't know what's going on. I'm only catching bits and bobs. I don't know all the information on what's happening on that show. So, guys, thank you. Gordon says Discovery season 4 is mostly solid, especially last week's episode. That was almost as pure Trek as it can get. One of the best episodes in the franchise. Okay, well, hopefully at some point I'll have to check it out. Maybe tomorrow night I'll give it a watch if I can find it. If I can sail the high seas and find it, because it's only on Paramount Plus. And yeah. But I don't think I'll be doing any reviews on Star Trek Discovery just yet. I'm going to be keep watching Star Trek Picard, do reviews on that. I did have promised 2 videos. There is another Starship Breakdown coming up when I have the time, as well as the Elorian trial video. I'm still working on that. So there are 2 new videos coming. I know I keep promising that they're coming out, and unfortunately things keep getting in the way. So that's, there is a problem with obviously getting these videos finished, but they will be coming soon. The Elorian trial and the USS Defiant breakdown, aka Cisco's Pimpand. If you haven't seen the other breakdown videos, I do recommend them. They are called Kirk's Babe Magnet, 1701 Kirk's Babe Magnet, and the 1701D Picard's Big D. So please check those out if you haven't seen them yet. Also, please don't forget to hit the like, comment, and subscribe, as well as hit the notification bell if you want to be notified on when a video drops. And please share the stream. With that out of the way, all I can say is have a good night and live long and prosper. Good night.